Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Mike Stenhouse. I run a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy think tank, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity. Today we released an analysis on the issues at hand today. You can find it on our website, rifreedom.org, how a constitutional convention can benefit Rhode Island. We encourage this commission to put out an extensive report in the handbook that looks favorably on this ballot initiative. You know, many claim, and we've heard from many people that from your perspective, well, those of you at least who are legislators, that this constitutional convention idea should be seen as a threat or a referendum on whether you've been doing your job or not. I don't see it that way. In the same way that the state constitution provides a General Assembly with the authority to enact the legislation, our Constitution also grants the people the opportunity to have a chance to vote to have a constitutional convention. It does not have to be seen as a failure of the General Assembly if, as we heard earlier, certain issues are too politically hot or partisan to be able to bring up in the context of the General Assembly legislative session. Many of those issues are explosive. Many of those issues you probably wish would just go away and you didn't have to deal with one way or another. Well, this is where a constitutional convention can help. Those issues can be considered, as others have testified, in a constitutional convention by the delegates and then ratified by the public to matter these issues, maybe not once and for all, but with a little bit more certainty than maybe would happen in a legislative process. So rather than looking at a CONCON as a challenge to the General Assembly, it should be looked at as a rare but co-equal constitutionally authorized mechanism. That's what it is. That works as a complement to the traditional legislative process. So this is why we encourage you to encourage citizens to exercise that right that is given to them in our Constitution and to become more engaged in the democratic process. By having a convention, voters would have a more direct voice in how their state is governed. Right now, they get to elect you, and then you elect the laws. Again, those of you in the General Assembly. In a CONCON, they not only get to elect you, who will set the parameters for a CONCON, but they will decide if there's going to be one. They will decide who the delegates will be, and then they will decide if the delegates made good decisions or not, and the recommendations coming out of there. That is citizen democracy in action. And to the earlier comment about accountability, there's no need for accountability to the actual delegates. The voters will decide if they made good decisions or not. End of story. As for specific recommendations, I'm not going to get into that. A lot of them have mentioned items that we agree with. But it is important, I think, some procedural issues maybe be recommended in your report so that the Constitutional Convention is not seen by many skeptical Rhode Islanders, cynical Rhode Islanders who just think a CONCON might be just another insider, politics as usual, rigged game. So here are some of our ideas. One, we recommend that you pass a statute ensuring that party affiliation is not part of the delegate election process. There's no reason in pure democracy like this that the word Republican or Democrat should ever be mentioned in the same breath as a CONCON. Number two, and we believe there's legal precedent that could challenge this otherwise, and in our report we mention that legal precedent, and we'll be coming out with a more extensive legal brief in the coming weeks on this. We just didn't have time to get it today. But you should pass a statute that bars currently sitting elected officials from running as a delegate. There is legal precedent on that, about a lot of cases just in the last 10 years that talk about running concurrently for elected office. So we think to avoid a legal problem, you should recommend that next year's General Assembly make that clear. Third, and we've heard some mention of this also already, transparency. Just like Ms. Clay mentioned earlier, we must ensure that every meeting of the leadership of the delegates, of the Constitutional Convention committees or plenary sessions must be held openly in public on Capitol TV or open to the public or otherwise. Please make this and recommend that as a transparent process completely, this is how we can best serve the people of Rhode Island. So in conclusion, well, I understand some of the reticence of some about having a convention, but there are certain points in history when a state like ours is suffering the way it is, when the legislative process is not addressing those reasons, not out of blame, just because of politics, that it might be best to go to the people and put in the mechanism that our Constitution allows for. And we think the Ocean State is at that point in history. So we ask you to put a favorable light on this. Let the people exercise their voice. One last item with regard to costs. You know, we've heard talk of a inspector general or a line item veto. The one-time cost of holding a convention, if any of those spending checks could be implemented, the cost of the convention will be dwarfed by the savings our state could achieve if we have more responsible spending in government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stenhouse. Are there any questions?